when I think of drunk uncle, I think of maybe the person who doesn't know how to manage their emotions, the person who gets a bit sad and makes other people uncomfortable because they're drunk and mopey or drunk and weird and awkward.
Rob, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Well, I think we were just talking about this before I jumped in here, but I just got done fighting with my wife about the level of around the holidays. I've been cleaning up, as I've said in earlier episodes, and I threw away some stuff that she found very valuable that she doesn't feel like I'm not showing enough sentimental interest in our children.
Yeah.
So that's the latest.
Yeah, that's great. I'm in a different spot. We just got a dog.
Oh, okay.
By dog, I mean like a 10 to 12 week old puppy that has, quite the sob story background and, all of the things. I'm a dog person. I grew up with dogs. My wife and I had a dog up until about a year and a half ago when we had to put him down because he had cancer. So I am not poo-pooing on dogs. Love dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have enough patience for my kids. So adding a puppy to the mix is not allowing me to be my best self.
I'd like to start at the beginning of when you were selecting this dog, and then you said, it has quite the sob story behind it. Can you tell me the story of how you located the dog and how much you grieved for the dog before you acquired it? How much tofu was eaten while you were talking about the dog with your wife? And then, can you walk me through?
So this was uncharacteristic of me. So usually, and especially pre-kids, like I would have had the dog the first day I find out about this dog. It would have been, yes, we're getting a new dog. The dog does have a sob story. A puppy found on the street somewhere here in St. Louis, and was taken in by a local shelter, and a friend of my wife's, who fosters dogs, had it, sent a picture to my wife, and it all fell apart from there.
Okay.
And super cute. He is all black dog. I'll have to post a picture about this on social media here, but all black dog, very cute. Will be, I don't know, 30 to 60 pounds. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already, pissing all over the place and stuff like that. So,
wait, so hold on. But so Jen comes to you and says, Rob, look at this dog. It's going to be alone on the holidays. Like, I want to know what's the story? How do you guys emotionally, right? Because you didn't want a dog. All of a sudden you're like, that poor dog is feeling isolated. No one loves it.
I had none of these feelings about the dog.
Oh,
no. So my feeling was we had agreed that we would wait another year to 18 months to get a dog. So the kids were older. They were in the same school, when things were somewhat easier. I don't even have a fenced-in backyard right now.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of things I wanted to put in place prior to the acquisition of a new animal.
Mm-hmm.
And none of those things are in place. So the conversation was a lot more like, no, we are not ready for a dog. We've had this conversation for the past 6 months, and it sounds like you want to hurry up and you've forgotten about what we've talked about already. And then she showed me a picture of the dog, and I'm like, yes, the dog is very cute. And I'm not sure how one thing informs the other.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was the conversation, but through some negotiations back and forth, we finally.
I like how when you describe it, like, look, I set the boundary in place a year ago. She challenged it. I told her, babe, boundaries in place. And then it's like smash cut to, so we went and got the dog.
Essentially, that's how this one played out.
Okay, good.
Which is also, I think, we'll talk about people who are passive aggressive later. I'm actually trying not to be passive aggressive. The best thing about this, and I'll have to send I'll have to show this to you at some point. So my wife was hoping that the experience of so we surprised the kids. The kids had no idea. So this was 2 days ago. She brings a dog. And my wife is expecting some Hallmark movie type of experience where the kids jump up and down and are crying in excitement and appreciation. My youngest, my son's like, "Oh yeah, we have a dog." My oldest is like, "What? What is this?" And then over the course of 20 to 30 seconds, just starts crying. "I don't want a dog. I don't want a dog." Like she is very upset about the dog. Long story short, well, I think she just got she was very surprised, and she does not like to be surprised, and a lot of emotions happening at once, and that just kind of caught her off guard. So, an hour later, she's all about the dog, and over the past 2 days, she's not leaving the dog alone, so everything's great. But I did have a bit of where does the term Schadenfreude? I'm like, oh, look at this. Look what you wanted. Now, how's that turning out for you? How are you liking this experience, Jen? And then she would look at me, and she's like, "You shut up. Don't look at me." So, I mean, I got a gift too. So we all got a gift in this experience.
Very good. Yeah, it's worth it to get the dog just for that moment.
Yeah.
Good.
So anyway, well, Dave, we took a brief hiatus from our 3-part series talking about family during the holidays, but we want to finish this 3-part series talking about some of the different cast of characters that we tend to find during the holiday season. So we've mentioned this in some of our previous episodes here. We have the drunk uncle, the passive aggressive parent, whatever it might be. So what I thought we would do is continue that conversation by talking about some of these caricatures.
Yep.
And then having you and I talk about, hey, in the moment, how would the two of us suggest that people address these, interact with these, maybe cope with these types of people?
Yep. And this will be the last episode of 2024.
Yes. Yeah, good call. So yeah, we are going to take a bit of end of year break, hang out with family, friends, stuff like that, talk just about the show in general. But yeah, we will take a couple-week break and be back with everyone in January.
Perfect.
The other thing I think it's important to say for this episode is, I mean, while you and I are psychologists, we're obviously just giving some very high-level suggestions here to everyone. We don't know everyone's individual individuals in their lives and people and stuff like that. So take this as maybe some introductory advice and do with it what you'd like.
Yep. Perfect.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I didn't know if do you have one that you want to present, or do you want to sort of go back and forth?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I have my, my first one here. And I think we talked about it kind of briefly before, and I just mentioned it, which is like drunk uncle. So drunk uncle could be a lot of things, right? There's a lot of movies and TV shows that have the drunk uncle. To me, when I think of drunk uncle, I think of maybe the person who doesn't know how to manage their emotions, the person who gets a bit sad and makes other people uncomfortable because they're drunk and mopey, or drunk and weird and awkward. Is that what you think of when you think of drunk uncle?
Yeah. Unhinged. Someone that creates a wide berth because no one knows how to deal with that person. Yeah, I think a lot of families have that character.
Yes,
for sure. And I need to just say this: I do not have this character in my family. The last time we did this, I went through like, what about this person and this person, and this person, and everybody in my family is like, was that me? Am I that person? And I'm like, I'm not. And everybody's like, we all know it's that one, right? And it's not. It's not that one. So yes, let's talk about the drunk uncle, and I do not have one.
I've talked about this with a couple of my family members as well. Some of whom may or may not have provided me with some suggestions. I don't have a drunk uncle, but some of these other folks may be a bit more ripped from the Rob Patterson family headlines. So
okay.
So yeah, so drunk uncle. As you think about that, Dave, I'm going to ask you first. How would you how would you recommend? Well, I guess I want to take a step back. One other thing worthwhile mentioning is my orientation, and I'll be interested to hear what you think here, is a lot of these folks may have bigger issues, which is the reason why they act the way that they do during the holiday season. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to kind of have a big, deep conversation to resolve what's going on with them or between you and them during the holidays. So my advice to people today is going to be more on how do you manage it, not necessarily how do you solve it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I think I would agree. I mean, I would say most often I'm like, no, you got to deal with this thing. But I think the Christmas dinner table is not the time to break somebody down or to have this kind of conversation.
Okay.
You know, I totally agree with you.
So let's start with drunk, unhinged, awkward uncle. What do you suggest people do there?
Well, here's what I usually do when someone's doing that. When someone's engaging in this kind of behavior, is I think I either make the mistake of doing what you said, which is I try to go right at it and say, this is how stupid you are for what you did or what you're saying, which is maladaptive, or I totally disengage. Like, you're doing, this person's acting in a crazy way. Well, I don't want to be a part of that. And I'm going to, display my displeasure by going and hanging out with the kids and playing puzzles or whatever, because I can't deal with whatever it is that you're doing.
Yep.
I think it's more adaptive, but also a passive aggressive way to handle it.
Yeah.
So I think the right answer is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Don't react, but continue to attend to the person.
I think the same thing. And it's funny because I think one of the things that differentiates how I respond is, are they like a family member of mine? Like, is it actually like one of my uncles or someone like that? Or am I at a party with, and my wife has a pretty small family, but am I at like a party with like a friend's house or something, and I'm just noticing this person for the first time? Because if I don't know them all that well, then I feel like the psychologist part of me comes in. I'm like, I wonder why this person's doing that. And I might engage in a bit of a conversation.
Yeah.
But if I do know them well, and this becomes more of a thing, I'm just like, nope. I don't even want to deal with it. Like, here we go again. And so I don't even engage, which can piss me off sometimes.
Yeah. So what do you do if you have to engage because the person is poking at you? So drunk uncle is now they're no longer talking about their conspiracy or their frustration with something that it's no longer about abstract politics. And now it's, well, Rob's one of the ones that does X, Y, or Z, where it's an insult at you.
Well, I think the way I act is, so there's the way that I do behave, and there's a way that I would suggest that people behave, right? To do what I say, not what I do. For drunk uncle, because again, it's different. If I'm drunk uncle, or if I'm interacting with drunk uncle, I might just try to kind of move them on to something else. Maybe if they're being a bit more mopey and awkward, I might just try to move them and say, hey, let's go watch this thing on TV. Let's just try to distract them with something else that they might be able to focus on. So distraction would be a way that I would manage that in the moment. It's not to engage. I mean, maybe at some point it is to ignore and just let them mumble to themselves in the corner. But I would say distraction would be my first thought there.
And I think that seems like that's good. That seems like a reasonable strategy.
Right.
What I was thinking is, I think my default recommendation would be to sort of go at it in a way that makes them more uncomfortable.
Sure.
So if they say something like, whatever, you're this way, or they're critical of you, if you turn it back on them and say something like, hey, you seem like you're really agitated. How are you feeling? Are you feeling frustrated or upset because you keep attacking everybody? Or, how's your, Are you feeling, maybe make a joke of it? Are you feeling jealous of me? Is that why you keep criticizing me?
Right.
Like some kind of acknowledgement of, I know what you're doing, but make them answer a question about it versus having to defend yourself.
Yeah, because I think this moves us to probably the second character. I see them as two different ones, right? There's the drunk uncle, which can be a bit more awkward and whatever, but then there's maybe someone who's a bit more actively aggressive because they've been drinking, or just because they have some shit that they want to talk to you about that you pissed them off about, last week, last month, or a decade ago.
Yep.
So in that situation, again, I don't feel like the dinner is the time to address that. But as we've said in previous episodes, if there's something I feel like has to be addressed in the moment, I would probably take that person and ask them to like step aside somewhere and just have a conversation. I'm not going to do it in front of everyone else. I think making the joke just to see how far they want to go with it, that, I mean, as I mentioned in here before, sarcasm is my second language, and so that's usually what I go to anyway. But if they keep coming back, and to the extent that it makes sense because they're not completely wasted,
can I just tell you the idea of being at dinner with you, and I say, Rob sucks, right, guys? And then if you say, hey, David, can we go talk in the back room? I'd be like, oh shit. That would ramp up the intensity really quick. Which is, I think it would. Right? That person would not do that again.
Maybe.
Right? Because you'd go back there and you'd say, hey, feel like you're attacking me. Let's stop doing that in front of everybody. And right. They would go, oh, Rob, they would probably go, oh, Rob, you're over exaggerating, or why making a big deal of it? And you can say, well, I want you to stop. I guarantee you they would stop. You would no longer be the person to pick on.
Right. Assuming that they want to still be, hang out and they care about what other people think. Yeah. Again, this has never personally happened to me. I'm just thinking what theoretically would have. Has that happened to you?
No. I can no, because I think we go at each other, but there's enough. I've been able to diffuse it enough with humor. Like, so for example, I'll be arguing with somebody. I'll say, hey, while we're having this argument, let's hold hands, because I want you to know that I love you while we argue about this thing. And that like diffuses people. Do you know what I'm saying? Or, hey, do you need it feels like you need a hug. Do you need a hug? Cause I'd be happy to give you a hug because there's something's going on with you. And I can usually use that kind of a weird comment to slow it down.
Yeah, that's good.
But I have been privy to people in my family, or, adjacent to my family, that are doing that, where it's so aggressive. And it's not one where you can make a joke about it. Like, there's a real insult happening. And I think that, it's like bullying. It's the same feedback I would give someone that's being bullied. You can joke about it and dismiss it, but at some point you have to have this sense of self. You have to have strong enough ego to go, hey, I'm willing to make this uncomfortable so that you stop what you're doing.
Because the person's already making it uncomfortable.
Yeah, right. They're already making it uncomfortable. And it's a weird thing where the person who's being victimized is essentially protecting the abuser, the bully, by not making it awkward.
Right.
If you just sit there and take it and don't do anything about it.
Right. Yeah, because the person who's getting bullied, or the person who is the recipient of all the comments, may feel, I can see myself feeling this way too. All right, well, I'm the bigger person here. I'm not trying to make it weird, so I'll go ahead and do the extra work to just diffuse the situation and move on.
And meanwhile, the bully gets away with saying whatever they want to say unchecked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so those would be a couple of suggestions there. I do like that. So kind of the diffusing if you can. And then if not, trying to find a way, maybe you could actively say it that way, or maybe it's just afterwards talking to the person later on if you really feel like you need to address it that day and say, hey, what the hell's going on here? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And I don't want you to do that. At least not here. Let's talk about it later.
Yeah. This is not fun for me. Can you stop doing that?
Yeah.
I think most people would be like, oh, geez. Right. They're called out on their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we just talked about active aggressive. What about passive aggressive? I was talking to someone the other day, and he was explaining to me that he has a family member that is not related to me. So
I like how we have to keep being like,
okay, family.
Like this.
Okay, family. But that when he has to interact with this person during the holiday season and kind of anytime else, there's a lot of passive aggression happening where it's, well, I didn't like this, or this meal didn't come out the way I wanted to, but it's not because of me. It's because of, well, that guy over there, like my husband, he didn't get the right thing. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, this isn't the experience that I wanted, but yeah, I'm not going to directly address you with it. You messed it up, but I'm just going to make kind of comments around it. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of, again, movies and TV shows where you see the passive aggressive, oftentimes parent, who is well-intended because they want everything to go perfectly, as we've talked about in previous episodes. But when things don't, they don't know how to manage that frustration. And so they become a little passive aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the character here. Yeah, go ahead.
No, when you were talking, I was trying to think of, I think the answer for passive aggressive, to combat passive aggressive behavior, my default suggestion is to become aggressive. I think, or assertive aggressive or whatever, be directive about.
Be direct.
If you're playing this, if you ignore it, they get I just think that if someone is mistreating you, you have to consequence them for that behavior. I think that's the right, because then you need to make it uncomfortable for them. This may be the world's worst feedback, so correct me if I have it wrong, Rob. But if somebody is treating you in a way that you don't want them to treat you, you have to make it uncomfortable for them to keep that behavior up.
Right.
And so the way to do that is to call it out. So, I mean, I don't know if you can think of an example of what a passive aggressive a comment would be, but if somebody's saying, "Hey, you spend more time with this family member than you do me," or you don't care about me like you care about this person. I'm trying to, like, comments are like these subtle comments. If you just say, "Hey, it's the third time you've suggested that I don't spend enough time with you. Are you upset with how much we're interacting?" Or, you know what I'm saying? I think if you just bring it to the forefront, that's a good way to handle it.
I think globally you're right. But again, I'm thinking of in the moment.
Yeah.
During the dinner, is that the right time to then get direct and assertive with this person?
Yeah. You're right. Probably not. You probably shouldn't be getting aggressive at dinner tables.
Right.
Yeah.
And so outside of rolling my eyes, which is probably something I would do, right? A lot of things I'm saying to myself in my head. I think what you're talking about is a good, like, next day, next week type of tactic to say, hey, you made a comment. It's like, well, I'm sure you didn't remember this happening because you have not been around for the past couple of Christmases. So I just wanted to let you know that this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if it's about me, then later on I want to talk to you about that. In the moment, what I probably would do, which is, again, not healthy, I would become a bit sarcastic about that probably. So I'll this is not advice that I'm giving anyone.
This is not a tip.
This is more just how I manage most things that I don't like, which is through sarcasm.
Yeah.
But the tip there, I would say, is to do nothing in the moment, is just to kind of swallow it and then address it later on. I don't think there's a good tip in the moment. There's nothing that I could come up with.
I'm going to clip that on our social media. I'm going to clip that on our social media. Rob Patterson's tip. I think you just do nothing.
But yeah, in the moment, I just think you have to take it.
Let me give you a compliment. Outside of this, I have seen you in the real world, and I think you actually do an exceptional job of, when there is interpersonal friction or things that you don't like, I think you're very good at talking about it. You're much better at it than I am. Because even though I'm like, I would just bring it to the forefront, I am the one between the two of us that I just
Sure.
I can deal, whatever. I'll just ignore that for 3 years. No big deal. Like that's my default strategy. I'm either we're going to go to battle or we're not going to talk about it. I'm not good at the in between. Let's talk about it before we get super upset.
So you think because I think we need to talk about two separate things. One is if you are the target of the passive aggression, and one if you are just the observer of passive aggression between two other people. Because I think that what I do is different. What I would recommend is different in that situation. If I'm the recipient of it,
yes,
swallow your pride and have the conversation the next day to say, hey mom, I heard what you said. It sounds like you're upset that I've not been at Christmas for the past 2 years. Let's talk about that. But in the moment, I would say, I don't want to make the conversation and the family get together about that. That's what my instinct tells me. Would you say something different?
I think your way is the right way. What I would do is I would ignore it. And then, I would probably be halfway through dessert and I would say, hey, I have a notepad here and I've recorded that 7 times you've been passive aggressive and it's really fucking pissing me off. And then you'd be like, whoa, who's the psycho that I would just keep tracking it and then be like, hey, now it's getting unreasonable at the wrong time. I think it's much better to be able to say, hey, I know this is bothering you. Let's just talk about it now so it doesn't become a thing at dinner.
Yeah. Certainly if you can plan for it ahead of time, that makes sense.
Or recognize that this is not the time and compose yourself. I guess I would say, as long as you hold yourself accountable for looping back at the end of the holiday, at the end of the dinner, at the end of whatever, make yourself talk through the thing. It would be the best practice versus, being like, I'll see him next Christmas. No big deal. And then you just get Christmas stacks on Christmas and you're ready to go to blows.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I imagine most of us have had the experiences where we don't address something that we want to, just because the emotional upside seems to be pretty low. But at some point, it may make sense to you if you're going to continue to see these people over and over again.
Yeah.
What if you are the observer in that situation where, let's say me and you are at the table and someone is, being really passive aggressive toward me? Do you do something different to intervene in that situation as the person who's not directly involved there?
I mean, I would like to think that I would do something. I think it'd be easier to do something if they were attacking you than me.
Right.
I imagine I'd probably be faster to stand up for you, which is an interesting. Like, I don't know why that's easier, but that feels easier because then it's like, it wouldn't be perceived that I'd gotten my feelings hurt.
Yes.
Right. There's a weakness that's perceived as if you like blow up, then there's an implication that you couldn't.
Okay.
Right. But if I blow up on your behalf, then I could obviously handle, not about me, but I'm protecting you. I think it makes it easier to say something.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think if we were, like brothers and our mom was, being passive aggressive against you, I would probably say something like, Mom, now is not the time. I hear what you're saying. We all hear what you're saying. Yeah, I've seen you talk to David about something, but can we not do that right now? Yeah, it becomes, so you're commenting about being direct. I think if it's against me, I don't want to. I think the way that I'm wired in particular is I don't want to make it a thing because I want to maintain some of the harmony. But if it's about others, like, no. For me, it feels safer to kind of come to the, like to save someone else. Like, no, we're not going to do that here. Than it is to make it about me. So in that situation, I think again, you could also just do nothing and suggest that your brother, sister, whatever else talk to your mom the next day. But I would probably, depending upon the significance of the comment, say at least a little something there.
Okay, so let's do like, what's the best, right? So we're not giving therapeutic advice here, but what is the best practice? Like, I think that was helpful when you said, that you would say, Mom, now is not the time. Like what are other entry points or ways to deliver the feedback that would put somebody, like, put them on their heels a little bit to stop the behavior? You could say, now is not the time. I don't know. You could say, this is the third time you've said, you could name, like, hey, you've said it 3 times now. This is enough.
Yeah, I think, your comment before about you diffusing with humor could be a way, even like a first step there, just to see if that helps the person, mom in the situation, kind of acknowledge what she's doing. And then maybe she'll stop there, at least for the rest of that day.
I was just thinking about why it feels safer to be the second person that's like being the protector. And I was thinking there's probably a lot of like sort of mechanisms at play. One is that you're not weak, and it could feel weak if you're the person defending yourself. Another is, that you're not, you're more likely to believe that you're not in the minority. If I feel like if we're at dinner and my mom is being critical of me or passive aggressive, then I might be like, am I the only one who feels like I'm being personally attacked? I don't really know what everybody thinks. But if my brother says, hey, Mom, knock it off. Like, now the brother at least knows that if he's feeling it, well, so am I. There's more of a consensus of people being tired of this behavior. That makes it easier.
I think so too. That would be part of the reason to acknowledge it, is assuming you see it, is to not allow that person to just feel like stranded on an island by themselves. Like, well, you got to figure it out, dude.
Which is another reason to say something,
right?
Is because that person could feel like they're on an island and everybody's on Mom's side of this issue.
Yeah, but I mean, that one's probably on the trickier side because there's so many what ifs. As it relates to passive aggressive, right? I mean, we're obviously not going to get into the history of the relationship between the people and the history of their dynamics and all those things. And so, if we just focus on in the moment, I think the tactics there, again, diffusing with humor. If it's about you, you could certainly say not right now, or just ignore it. If you're observing it between someone else, you could acknowledge it and say, now is not the time to have this conversation, and then move on.
Yeah. Okay. So let's switch it. So let's just say, so similar scenario, but now you're the mom. Let's just say you're the parent and your child comes home for the holidays and your child's an absolute deadbeat. You've been funding their lifestyle and they are, you think, just smoking it away. And here they come in, they're putting their feet up on the table and they're expecting you to feed them pie and whatever. And you need this behavior to stop. How do you don't want to be aggressive at the dinner table, but you want this person to know that they need to change their lifestyle. How do you give them that feedback?
So the first thing I would say is observing your kid being a slovenly glutton and wasting their life away is, you probably not just observed that for the first time on Christmas Eve dinner. You've observed that throughout the course of their life. So my first reaction is, why the hell are you even bringing it up? Right. Why is now the time that you're bringing this up? And maybe it's because they're there. Maybe they don't live in the same city, and so it's easier to do these types of things in person. Maybe. So I get that, but my first reaction is, well, don't. Now is not the time, as we've been talking about. Now is not the time to address it. The time would be when you're on, talking beforehand, maybe when you're just out visiting each other where there isn't a crowd of people around to have to observe the fact that your frustrations have been pent up for the past 5 years about this person's life choices. But there would just be, all right, I don't know. That was what would be my suggestion to someone who is talking to me about this. What about you?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think the answer is I think for both of your the well-being of both people in both parties here. You want to compartmentalize when you have these conversations. You don't want your deadbeat son to be afraid to call home because he doesn't know if you're going to give him a lecture about the fact that he just lost another job. So I would say, hey, call and text him and say, I want to talk to you about the fact that you just lost another job and I'm tired of funding your lifestyle. And that way he knows this is happening and you can have that conversation. And then you also want to say, hey, you're going to come out for Christmas or whatever, and we're not going to talk about your job. I want you to enjoy the holiday. I want to enjoy the holiday with you. I want you to feel like, we love you. You're a deadbeat, but we love you. And we want you to feel
separate these two things. Yeah.
Yes. It's not going to be pass the pie and you're a deadbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it, like, in my mind, the way this goes sideways is you have your son come and you go, I'm just going to love the son and I want them to feel, comfortable at home. And then you're passing the pie and the son's, having a lot of the pie. And then you find out who the son voted for and you go, oh, all those people, right? All those people are that way. The example I'm thinking of in my head is from my in-laws, and I forget what it was. Or something like they're at the like at a fast food restaurant, and my son wanted extra. He wanted to fill up his Coke, his drink at the fountain drink thing, and he'd finished it, and he goes, "I'm just going to get more of it because it's for free, right?" And then my father-in-law was like, "Well, yeah, if you're on the left, you think that." That you can just get free fountain drink, whatever, someone's going to pay for that for you. No big deal. I get that sounds right to you. Right. And he just thinks it's fun, but he's doing it in a way, like I've said before, we have a politically mixed family and so there's little little bump. Right. And so, but imagine if you're at the dinner table and your kid's acting the opposite could be true where they are, the son says, pass the pie and I'll have more because I've earned it and you haven't. And then you go, Andy's voting this way, and it creates it's a trigger for you to lose your ability to maintain composure with your kid who you're already frustrated with.
Yep. Yeah, I would say that, it does make it more difficult because oftentimes with families, as you and I have discussed before, it is rarely just the thing that's happening in the moment that triggers the reaction.
Yeah.
Which is why I was saying before, if there's a drunk uncle and I'm at like a friend's party, I'm interested. Right. I want to talk to him about it. Like, I want to know what's going on because I don't have 35 years of interacting with a drunk uncle in a way that caused me to be frustrated increasingly over these past 35 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, and that's why I have the politics top of mind just because of my like the family dynamic, but that's right. So it's all of the other anything that you feel like this person's always doing this, you're going to be hyper aware of that. And you're going to struggle to compartmentalize what you're trying to do at dinner versus what you really feel about this person or how, you'd like their lifestyle to be adjusted.
Right. Yeah. I think what this also makes me think about is, again, we are, as most of us at least, are very conflict avoidant people. I'm certainly guilty of being conflict avoidant, and I have to challenge myself not to be. But can you just imagine if we weren't, if this was just like a society of people where we saw something, we addressed it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knew that was just what happened, and then we all moved on.
Yeah.
That would be so weird. And that would be almost like I guess it's my gut tells me yes. My gut tells me that would be better. Like if you did something that pissed me off, that I could just say, "Hey, Dave, what you just did there, I don't like that. Don't do that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you would know, oh, okay.
Yeah, I shouldn't do that.
I shouldn't do that. Or I disagree, and here's why, and we could talk about it, right? That's never going to happen. Maybe there are societies I'm unaware of where that happens. I don't think so, but maybe that does happen. And it's just not the way that people work. So I think it would be better.
It's interesting. but we've evolved. I mean, maybe we've evolved in a maladaptive way, but if I were going to argue against you, I would say, it must be, if we've evolved this way, it must be adaptive for us not to be constantly battling each other about everything. You know, I mean, think about like 2,000 years ago, if I was like, I like your wife. Hey, I'd like to sleep with your wife. And you're like, no, let's fight to the death about it.
Right.
Maybe it's better for me to be like, I'll just, I'm going to keep that to myself.
Right.
And that way I'm not constantly fighting, husbands of women I find attractive.
Right.
Like maybe there's some adaptive quality of, I can think one thing about you. That's an extreme example, but if I'm fighting over every single thing that, like, maybe it's a strategy for us to keep the peace over constantly fighting.
Agreed. But I would also say that, and I say this sometimes to people I work with when I make jokes about conflict, is, until very recently in the history of our species, right, it was fight or flight.
Yeah.
Or freeze, right? So there's, you either engage, you don't do anything, or you kind of back away. It's very recently in our history that there's this, even the concept of conflict management. How do we manage it? How do we address and resolve?
Yeah.
And so I think that's more my orientation. That's why I'm saying some of this is, in general, my thought is it's better to address and resolve. Now, of course, that's not always the case. There's a lot of situations where in a dynamic that may not be the best solution or way forward. But that's usually my default mode, that when I'm working with people, I'll start with that in mind, get a sense of whether it makes sense in the situation we're talking about to do that or not.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It 100% makes sense. And I think you're right that I think we've probably, because of that history, we've evolved in a very conflict avoidant way.
Right.
But now we have the ability to handle the conflict in a healthy way. And so we are probably slow to get there. And so we're all uncomfortable with it because we're sort of reminded from an evolutionary standpoint of a full-on battle that's created when there's conflict.
Yeah. This example actually brings me, I think, and we've talked about this one a little bit, but to my last character here, which is the person who wants to have the conversation. So, right, a lot of our examples here, at least my suggestions have been, pause, hold off, delay, talk about it at a different time. But what if you're with a person who's like, no, we need to talk about this right now? Like, I don't call you out and the delay tactics are not working.
Yeah.
Then what do you do?
I think I have well, first of all, I'm a little bit concerned that I am that person. That is, if like my family was doing this, they'd be like, David does not have boundaries.
So Dave, you're the reason, you're the inspiration for this character. I've never been in a family. No, I'm just kidding.
That's very possible.
I can see you're a flamethrower. Yeah, you're not the person who wants to have the conversation, but you like just to see and then talk. And then, as you said before, the lack of addressing or having the conversation pisses you off. I see that.
Yes. And so I think I would default to having, I would sort of go like, hey, this person, like you started it, so we're going to have the conversation. I think I would struggle to disengage, especially if the other person was like leaning into the conversation.
Is that what you would recommend?
I mean, that's what I would want, but I think that for everybody else at the table, they'd prefer that we, I one time interviewed. Do you know who Matthias Desmet is? He's a psychologist out of the University of Ghent, and he wrote this book, The Evolution of Psychology or something like that. And he had some pretty provocative views about COVID. And my brother-in-law disagreed on how I interviewed the guy, and I thought I had perspective and he had a very different perspective. And we spent, I think, 3 days arguing about this guy. And I loved the conversation. And my wife and his wife were like, we would like to stab both of you because this is disrupting the entire vacation for everybody because you guys are all bloviating about something no one's even involved in. We were like fighting and yelling at each other. I loved it, but nobody else did. And so I think for everybody else's benefit, you have to be able to disengage.
Did your brother-in-law like it? Did he want to talk to you? Like, was he having fun in the conversation? Okay.
Yeah, I think that he. Yes, I think that he liked it.
Okay.
I mean, I think he disagreed. We weren't holding hands while we were talking. I several times said, let's hold hands while we talk about this. We had strong opinions, but we both want to talk it through. But it's disruptive.
Yeah. And I think that's it. And maybe, I don't know if I said this clearly, but yeah, if the goal of a lot of these management techniques that we're talking about is not to disrupt, then I think what we're saying makes sense. But like you, especially if it's about like a topic like that, just like a topic or something that's going on in the world or in the news or in politics, I very much enjoy having those conversations. And I happen to have a lot of family members who enjoy that as well. Now, that's not the case for everyone, though. And I think in particular, my dad is known like as the person who won't necessarily bring it up, but he won't, like, once the switch is on, it's difficult for him to turn the switch off. And he doesn't, especially more recently, doesn't get as like perturbed about it. But I think it makes other people uncomfortable because it makes them think that there's some sort of stress in the relationship between him and that person, or when I do it, between me and that person.
Yeah.
That I don't perceive to be there. And as long as that's not the case for the other person, I think can be okay.
Yeah. So coach me off the ledge here on this. So I've gotten this feedback before that people would like me to stop arguing about whatever the thing is. But if I'm comfortable and the person I'm arguing with is comfortable, do I need to, why is that person at the other side of the table's distress? Why do I have to work? Maybe the coaching should be, hey, it's not what you think it is. Relax and let us have the discussion we want to have. Do you have to? Why do I have to be worried about? Because if we wanted to not, let me say it this way: if we wanted to not offend anybody or not upset anybody, we could talk about nothing, and we'd all be bored to tears, but nobody would be at all upset. Or we can allow for conversation and recognize that our experience in the debate is different than what it might be across the table.
Yes. And you're probably not going to change the level of kind of comfort or discomfort in the room with everyone else if everyone else is telling you, hey, this is making me uncomfortable, even if they're not able to tell you why. So again, my orientation would be, let's do it, but let's go like to the other room, or let's go outside, or let's and others who want to talk about, like, let's do this over here. Doesn't need to happen.
That's the right answer
here.
Yep. That's the right answer. You don't have to do it at the dinner table in front of everybody.
And I've been at I've had plenty of family, holiday celebrations or just other get-togethers where I talk a lot about politics, and the people who don't like it leave, or me and those people go other places.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's the right answer. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't always do that. I try to do that.
Yeah. I think that if I'm honest with myself, what happens most often is, because like my brother-in-law and I will fight a lot about this kind of stuff. What happens is we start fighting, and then we look up and it's whatever, an hour and a half down the road, and there's nobody else at the table. Like everybody else has left, and we're sitting there battling, and we've isolated everybody to the point that nobody wants to be around us, and they're all right. Whereas we should be like, okay, we're going to go somewhere and talk about it.
Right.
Or this is disruptive enough. We should stop for now.
Again.
Yeah.
Someone told me this. I imagine it's a family member, but honestly, I can't remember who told me this, but it makes a ton of sense. And it was something like, holiday get-togethers are just an opportunity for family members to increase their connection between each other. And so assuming that that's why people are getting together in the first place is to increase connection, especially as families get bigger and older and their lives pull them apart more.
Yeah.
Then don't do things that prevent that connection from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you should keep that top of mind. Is this behavior right now helping us feel more connected, or is this spreading us apart?
Right. And you can't control what other people do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you're wanting to control yourself and assuming that that's your goal, I think these recommendations make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
think is it concerning, Rob, that I think for every single one of these categories, you and I said that we don't do what we're supposed to do? There's no category we're like, oh, we're great at this. This one's my strength.
No, I think just like good parenting, do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true in most parts of our life, right? We oftentimes know the answer. It doesn't mean we always do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
I
right.
know that I need to be patient.
No
right. Mm-hmm. I need to be patient with my kids, and the fact that I have a dog, and that I said yes. I ultimately said yes. We can get a dog, so I should be all in because I made that decision. Absolutely not. No, the healthy thing to do would be to do that. But no, I'm not going to be all that happy about this, and I am going to say, well, other people need to go take care of this dog. I don't want the dog.
Yeah, you're gonna hold it over your wife's head. That's that's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, as we mentioned, this is the last show before the holiday season, and we got a suggestion for a topic here that I didn't think really fit a caricature, but I thought because it's end of year holiday season, it would be something for us to talk about. So I want to end here.
Okay.
In your household, assuming there is some gift giving that occurs both within your own nuclear family with your kids and then extended family, right? Because you're if I'm correct, right, you have a Christmas and Hanukkah celebration within your household, right?
Yep.
So a lot of presents happening.
Yep.
Who is responsible for gift giving, and is it kind of, what are the proportions of people who are responsible for buying the gifts?
It is Rob, we're going to get in big trouble with this. This is I don't know why you're ending the year on this conversation.
Because it makes me look good. That's why. Go ahead.
It is probably 90% Allison, 85% Allison that's buying the gifts.
For everyone, not just your kids. Like, assuming you do gift giving for like non-kid family members, or is that not true?
I shop this year. I shopped for my brothers. We do like a, we do a, what do we call it? Like a Secret Santa. Yeah. I bought that. Yeah, I buy some. I think it's, now that you added, you know what? For the kids, it's 95 Allison. For other people, I think now it's 70-30. I do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, she resents that it's her that's doing it. And I'm always like, let me help you do it. But it is not top of mind. I don't think of, she is like creating a Christmas shopping list in October. Like, she's just way ahead of it. And, and I suck in that way. What about for you?
I would say it's in my nuclear family, it is more like 70-30. Like, my wife and I this year, as an example, she bought some things, and then I sent her some ideas that I had, but I sent them to her because the assumption here is that she's coordinating for my kids the gift giving experience. Outside of that, we separate by family. So she buys stuff for her parents. I buy stuff for my parents and my sister, and then we do Secret Santa for my extended family, my cousins, and we each take care of that. So outside of my nuclear family, it's every man for themselves.
Yeah.
We're not that. Yeah, but inside, it's the lion's share is on my wife as well, and I would argue that this is one of the ways in which she's just a better person than me, is right, because she is thinking. I mentioned the dog example, and I made fun of her for it, but in general, like, what she's thinking about is how excited our kids are going to be if they open up this type of gift, and it's going to be really neat. And I'm excited about that too, just not as excited as she is about that.
Yeah, I think the same, and I think that. But I am and this is where Allison and I get in a fight. Is I am more than willing to help, and I will even go and buy some of the stuff
on like 5 o'clock on December 24th.
Well, later than she would like. Yeah, later than she would like, and but she would argue, like the fact that you're thinking of the gifts. Allison's thing is the emotional burden. That's what she feels like, and she thinks that I lay that on her. I would argue she would not be happy if she were here, but I think I do a lot of other stuff to take care of that. Like she's not hanging off the roof, hanging Christmas lights. She's not buying all that. Anything outside in the yard, all that is done by me. Cleaning the garage, so just to be clear, I'm not like just smoking cigarettes and yelling at her around the house. But the fact that you thought of kids' gifts and you send a note and say, "Hey, we should think about X, Y, or Z for this one." I don't do that, but I am the one. Like this year, Lena will get a bike. I'm the one going to different bike shops and finding the bike. I buy the bike. I put it in the car. That's 4 or 5 hours of my time going to different bike shops and getting the right bike for him. But I think that Allison clocks that as she thought of the bike and wanted the bike for Leno. And so in her mind,
you're just executing on it. Yeah.
I'm executing on it. And I'm like, well, I'm executing. It's 4 or 5 hours. And she's like, yeah, but you didn't think about this was just done for you, So I would say that's where she definitely is way more in the way of prepping and planning, but you like to plan. You're like a planner.
That's definitely, I like to plan, and I'm more likely to coordinate in that way. Now, in this year is a good example. My wife had already started, and she prompted the conversation because she said, all right, here are the things that I got. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. You'd be big. You're in big. I'm in big trouble when we're having that conversation.
But yeah, I mean, my wife has more of the burden, but I think this question came up because there are people that I know where in that relationship where the mom takes on the gift buying responsibility for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And dad's surprised when the gifts are distributed. Yeah.
Right. Like that was my experience growing up. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so I think you can make the argument, okay, maybe that's okay. Mm-hmm. But in my household, in your household, that's not the case.
Right.
Right. Both parents are working. So, and some other people I talked to where, I don't know any situation in which the dad takes primary responsibility and the mom does not. I personally don't know of any. And that would be more memorable for me, I think.
Yeah.
If that were the case.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I don't know why that gender role exists, right? Like that's one that I feel like it should. That's sad. Like, well, I don't know why guys don't. We can shop just as well. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why that, but I also don't know anybody that has that dynamic.
Right. So anyway, that's probably a whole nother episode. We don't need to dive all the way down into that, but it did.
I'm going to have to scrub this for Allison. Here's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunity for both of us here. It sounds like so. Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, perfect. That's what we have. Thanks again for everyone for listening this year. If you would like to continue hearing episodes from us, please remember to like or subscribe wherever you listen to us. You can also find us, as always, on our social media channels at Shrink Space Show, or email us your ideas, feedback, reactions, things we missed to shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com. Dave, anything else?
Nope. Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Have a good holiday and New Year.
Yeah, right back at you. Bye, everyone.